Welcome to Newsday, reporting live from Singapore. I'm Karishma Viswani. The headlines. Putting on a show of power. Taliban forces parade the military equipment America left behind. Governing, however, is another matter, with no women planned for top jobs.
In this new government which has been announced, in the top posts, I mean to say in the cabinet, they may not be women.
An economy close to collapse. The value of the Afghan currency plummets while the price of goods soars.
The Afghan economy has been heavily dependent on international aid. Whether or not that continues, at least when it comes to the West, is likely to be dependent on what kind of government the Taliban create, what kind of laws it enforces.
The U.S. Supreme Court ignores appeals against a new law in Texas banning 85% of abortions. President Biden says it's a blatant violation of constitutional rights. And in California, emergency crews continue to battle a huge wildfire around Lake Tahoe. More than 50,000 people are evacuated from the region.
Live from our studio in Singapore. This is BBC News. It's Newsday.
It's 8 in the morning in Singapore, 8 in the evening in Washington, and 4:30 in the morning in Kabul, where the Taliban is moving closer to establishing a government now that the US exit from Afghanistan is complete. A senior leader told the BBC the government would be inclusive, but against this backdrop, the economy of Afghanistan is close to collapse, with little immediate prospect of the new Islamist rulers gaining access to the country's foreign currency reserves held in the West. Prices of essential goods are soaring, the value of the currency is falling, and many public services are barely able to function. Here's our Afghanistan correspondent, Sekunder Kermani.
The Taliban are in firm control of the country. This, a huge military parade in the southern city of Kandahar, along with a captured helicopter. But the group still hasn't established a new government, leaving many Afghans in a state of limbo. Now that the final foreign troops have left, an announcement is expected soon. The last time the group was in power in the 1990s, their regime saw public executions and women banned from working. Now they say things are different, though they admit women won't be in senior positions.
Maybe they will be in the government in the lower these things, because in every department of the government ministries, you can say almost half of the workers are women, so they can come back to their work and they can continue. But maybe in this new government which has been announced, in the top posts, I mean to say in the cabinet, they may not be women.
The uncertainty about what the future will look like has seen the value of the Afghani drop and concerns about the economy rise. The World Bank and IMF are holding back from continuing support, whilst the US has frozen reserves and most local banks remain closed.
No one has any money right now. All their savings are stuck in the banks. People are just bringing small amounts of cash here to exchange, to pay for everyday living.
I needed money for groceries, but the exchange rate isn't good, so I'm going home. The currency rate just keeps on fluctuating. I pray that God brings stability to the government and these problems can be solved.
The Afghan economy has been heavily dependent on international aid. Whether or not that continues, at least when it comes to the West, is likely to be dependent on what kind of government the Taliban create, what kind of laws it enforces. Governing Afghanistan is going to prove a bigger challenge for the Taliban than taking control of it. They've been holding meetings with senior political figures like former President Hamid Karzai, but many doubt whether they're willing to really share power. Their elusive leader, Mullah Haibatullah, may well be declared leader of an Islamic emirate. These new pictures of some of the final US troops to be withdrawn from Afghanistan. The focus now is on what they've left behind. Sekunder Kermani, BBC News, Kabul.
Well, for more on how inclusive or not inclusive the new government in Afghanistan is likely to be, here's our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette.
Well, there's this magical word of inclusive is being used by Afghanistan's neighbours to try to put pressure on the Taliban to share some of the power so they don't have absolute control. But look at it in pure political terms. The Taliban have come to power much more quickly than even they expected. They now control more territory in Afghanistan than even when they were in power in the 1990s. So they feel they have an overwhelming mandate to pursue their overriding objective. And that is, I mean, we use words like government, cabinet. Their objective is to establish an Islamic system. So the choice of who is in, to use the word, the cabinet is going to be very much, they're now said to be discussing individuals on the basis of Islamic principles and Sharia law. Are these people corrupt? Did they work for the former government? And what about women? Women will not be playing a leading role. This is this new emerging Islamic emirate. Women will be playing secondary roles to men. We're hearing reports they'll play some roles, but not at the senior levels. And this is already very different from what we heard even 2 years ago when the Taliban started discussing with representatives of the Afghan government and civil society here. They had this platform of words where they said women can have any roles in our new Islamic government except the president or the prime minister, but they can be ministers, they can be CEOs. Now they seem to be rolling back from that because what happened in the past is now history. It's a new day for them, and it's a day when the Taliban are in charge.
The BBC's chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette there. Meanwhile, General Mark Milley is the US Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman. At the latest Pentagon briefing, he gave this assessment of the Taliban.
We don't know what the future of the Taliban is, but I can tell you from personal experience that this is a ruthless group from the past, and whether or not they change remains to be seen. And as far as our dealings with them at that airfield or in the past year or so, in war, you do what you must in order to reduce risk to mission and force, not what you necessarily want to do.
Well, we'll have more on Afghanistan a little later in the programme when we'll hear from a father separated from his 7-month-old baby girl. And don't forget, there are more stories like that, plus the latest developments and reporting from Lise and our team in Kabul on our website. Just go to bbc.com/news or download the BBC News app. In other news, a law banning abortion from as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy has come into effect in the U.S. state of Texas. It will prevent anyone in the state from conducting an abortion once a fetal heartbeat is detected, which for most women is about 6 weeks into the pregnancy before many even know they are pregnant. Opponents of the law say it will effectively ban at least 85% of abortions sought in the state, including pregnancies from rape or incest, making it one of the most restrictive bills in the country. Senator Brian Hughes is the author of this bill.
We had a number of prosecutors in America, a district attorney in the U.S., that's our elected prosecutor, and they said publicly at the end of 2019, many states are considering heartbeat laws, but if you pass these laws, we will not enforce them. So the sworn elected prosecutor saying will not enforce the law. We had to find a way to enforce the law. The private lawsuits are used in American jurisprudence all the time. Medicaid in Texas is our government healthcare system. If you defraud the Medicaid system, any Texan can bring a claim against you. In the era of consumer protection that's been under law for a long time, that's what this is about. In Texas, we protect innocent human life. And for years, we've been coming alongside the mothers, providing more funding, more help for expectant mothers. We don't just forget about them after the child comes along. We want to support those mothers while we protect that innocent human life. That's what this bill's about, plain and simple.
Senator Brian Hughes there. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Diana Gomez from the Progress Texas Group. Great to have you on Newsday, Diana. In the first instance, can you spell out what this new bill now means for women in the state of Texas?
Definitely. This bill is the first of its kind to be enacted in the entire country. It is cruel, it is unconstitutional, and it is an attempt to upend our legal system. Now, before today, it was already very difficult in Texas for people to access abortions. What SB 8, this new law, is doing is it is making sure that a vast majority of Texans won't be able to access abortion.
Diana, as you pointed out, a lot of people saying that this bill is unconstitutional, could further fuel legal and political battles over the future of Roe versus Wade. In fact, the 1973 decision that established that constitutional right to abortion in the United States. How concerned are you that this could set a precedent for other states passing these sorts of bills?
I'm extremely concerned. Right now, Texas is the battleground for abortion rights in the entire country. I think this is definitely, like I said before, the first of its kind to be enacted. Other 6-week abortion bans have been proposed across the country in different states, but they've all been overturned in higher federal courts. This is the first one to actually go into effect. And I think the entire country of the United States should watch what's happening in Texas and know that they need to prevent this from expanding further into other states. Now, the Supreme Court didn't intervene yesterday to pause it, to stop it from going into effect today, but there is still time. They can still stop it from continuing.
Yeah, on that, there is an application that it has been put forward. The court is expected to rule on that shortly. Any chance of this being overturned?
You know, I hope so, because this law is extremely unconstitutional. It's why other laws like it across the country have been overturned. And we hope that our Supreme Court justices respect the Constitution, follow precedent, and respect Roe versus Wade that declares abortion the law of the land as it is.
Diana Gomez there from the Progress Texas group. Thank you for joining us on Newsday. Well, let's take a look at some of the other stories in the headlines today. A U.S. judge says he'll approve the content maker Purdue Pharma's bankruptcy reorganization plan. The move clears a path to resolve thousands of opioid lawsuits, but protects the company's wealthy Sackler family owners from future opioid litigation. North Korea has rejected roughly 3 million COVID-19 vaccine doses of China's Sinovac biotech, saying they should be sent to severely affected countries first, particularly Africa and Asia. So far, North Korea has not reported any COVID-19 cases and has imposed strict antivirus measures, including border closures and domestic travel curbs. Zambia's new president says horrifying amounts of state funds have been stolen. Hakainde Hichilema told the BBC he had inherited an empty treasury and that people were still trying to make last-minute illegal transfers of funds. Mr. Hichilema beat the incumbent Edgar Lungu last month in his 6th attempt at running for president. Well, if you want to get in touch with me on any of the stories that you've seen on Newsday, the situation in Afghanistan, for instance, or that law in Texas, I'm on Twitter at BBC Karishma. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. Still to come on the programme, you've got to hand it to her, the Korean Paralympian determined to grab her chance in Tokyo.
She received the Nobel Peace Prize for her work with the poor and the dying in India's slums. The head of the Catholic Church said Mother Teresa was a wonderful example of how to help people in need.
We have to identify the bodies, then arrange the coffins and take them back home. Parents are waiting and wives are waiting. So.
Hostages appeared, some carried, some running, trying to escape the nightmare behind them.
Britain lost a princess today, described by all to whom she reached out as irreplaceable. An early morning car crash in a Paris underpass ended a life with more than its share of pain and courage, warmth and compassion.
This is Newsday on the BBC. I'm Karishma Vaswani in Singapore. Our headlines. Afghanistan is facing a major economic crisis as the value of its currency falls, sending the price of everyday necessities soaring. Many public services are close to collapse. The U.S. Supreme Court ignores appeals against a new law in Texas banning 85% of abortions. President Biden says it's a blatant violation of constitutional rights. Meanwhile, 50,000 people have been forced to leave the Lake Tahoe area of California as firefighters continue to battle a huge wildfire in the region. The area is a popular tourist destination, but it's largely deserted now as strong winds fan the flames of a blaze that's destroyed more than 700 structures, most of them family homes. For more on the scale of this fire, I spoke to our North America correspondent Peter Bowes.
There are huge challenges, not least because of the size of this fire. It covers about the equivalent area of the city of Chicago. So you can imagine how difficult that is for firefighters to get containment around the perimeter of this fire, which is what they are trying to do. There is some good news there in that there's about 20%, a fifth of the perimeter is now contained, which is slightly better than the last few days. So it is slowly, just slowly moving in the right direction. But tremendous challenges, not least the winds. There are tremendously strong winds, and it's very unpredictable in terms of the direction of the winds. We've heard many local residents talking about the fact that they were safe or felt that they were safe in a certain area, and then in a heartbeat the winds would change and they would see the flames coming in their direction. So that is one of the major challenges, and the fact that this is a very populous area. You mentioned 50,000 people have been evacuated. Many of the fires that you hear about in California are in remote areas. They're high up in the forest where not so many people live. This is a popular tourist destination, and the fact that there are so many people around poses another challenge for the authorities.
Yeah, Peter, you know, this summer season, the summer fire season, according to some experts, is shaping up as one of the most destructive on record. You've talked about those unpredictable winds. What are some of the other conditions that have led to this?
There are several reasons. Of course, climate change can't be ignored. There's growing evidence that these huge super fires, as they're sometimes referred to, are linked to climate change. Fires that we see now that go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And yes, there have always been fires in California, but not of this intensity. That is one of the key reasons. Also, just the prolonged drought, which you could say is also related to climate change. The fact that the forest, the foliage, the dead wood, everything is tinder dry and burns so easily. Then there are longer term reasons as well. Policies, forest policies of fire suppression over the years. In other words, not allowing fires to burn, whereas the more recent thinking is that if only some of those forests had been allowed to burn, the dead wood, the foliage thinned out on the ground, that perhaps some of these forest fires wouldn't have been as intense today.
Peter Bowes there, our North America correspondent. Well, let's turn our attention back to Afghanistan, our top story now. And among the tens of thousands of people who found themselves separated from loved ones by the events of the past few weeks is a 7-month-old girl and her parents. Her father is a British national. He's in the UK, but baby Gulrina, living with her grandparents, is in Kabul because her passport has only just been issued. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning has been speaking to Gulrina's father. His identity is concealed to protect the family.
Too young to know what has happened, too small to comprehend, she is stuck in Kabul without her parents. Gulrina, one of the youngest Britons left behind.
We are missing her a lot. You know how people feel when their child is outside the country, and you know the country where there is a war and you don't know what's going to happen next.
Her parents thousands of miles away.
What?
This is the closest her dad, Mohammed, in London can get to her. He can only try to keep their bond alive. When Kabul fell, Gulrena still didn't have her UK passport. 5 months after her British father applied, his identity hidden for the family's safety.
She is stuck in Afghanistan because of the passport delay. If the passport took less time, she would have been here with us. And she is stuck there with my other part of the family, and they're all in danger. I called the consulate, when this everything happened, and they said she's not British here. You have to wait till her passport arrives, then she's British, then we can help you. I told them it's going to be too late.
Trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare, Gulrena was born unexpectedly in Kabul in January, when her mother, an Afghan, was unable to return to the UK as planned after visiting relatives because she'd lost her UK ID card. She eventually got a temporary visa to return to Britain in May to get a replacement, but had to leave Gulrena behind with grandparents. Then the Taliban took over.
I want government to help me find me way, take them out, take my daughter and my family out of Afghanistan, and the government can do anything if they want to, and they can do it. Why not?
But how do you want the government to help when they don't have any soldiers on the ground?
They can help. They can find a way. They can find a way. These are their governments.
The government says it has evacuated more than 16,000 people from Afghanistan, but it knows more must be done to support those at risk. Government advice has long been for Britons not to travel to Afghanistan. Gulrena's mother says she is lost without her baby by her side, is losing hope, and begs the government to help.
Finally.
At 3 o'clock this afternoon, Gulrena's passport finally arrived. But with nearly half her short life separated from her parents, there's now no easy way to bring her home. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
What a difficult story and situation for that family to have to go through. Well, meanwhile, in preparation for the Tokyo Paralympics 2020, South Korean hand cycling champion Do-yeon Lee has been riding more than 300 kilometers every week. But despite nearly a decade in the sport, she's still not always welcomed on the roads. During a recent race, people even called the police to report a dangerous woman was loose on the roads. The BBC Korea's Julie Yoon-young Lee spoke to Do-yeon ahead of her journey to Tokyo.
My hope, my dream, and my goal is to cycle.
인생의 목표가 있어서 그래.
Do-yeon Lee without a bicycle has no dreams or goals to achieve.
사실 없어요.
How cycling saved my life.
안녕하세요.
Hello, I am Do-yeon Lee, a hand cyclist from South Korea.
At 19 years old, Do-yeon was involved in a serious fall.
그 모든 걸 잃어버린
I felt like I had lost everything. I became depressed and I couldn't break out of it. I lost my way for a long time.
방황하게 되고.
That's how I lived for a while.
She began paracycling at 41 years old. 3 years later in Rio, she won a silver medal.
If my daughter is having a hard time, I want to do everything for her. Back then, 20 million won was a lot of money. I used my savings to buy her first bike.
Every week, she rides more than 300 kilometers.
훈련 중에
Some people curse me when I'm training. They say, why are you riding on the road?
이제 돌에서 훈련하고 있는데 왜 이런 데서 훈련하고 있냐고.
People even called the police saying it was dangerous.
그랬어요.
As a single mother of 3, she wants her daughters to learn from her journey.
It's not about me being the best mother. I want them to manage their frustrations, never give up, and always be grateful. I want to show them I've found happiness by following my dreams.
보여주고 싶어요.
What an inspiring story there. Meanwhile, Portuguese footballer Cristiano Ronaldo has broken the all-time record for goals scored in the men's international game, scoring his 110th against the Republic of Ireland. The goal edged him past the previous record holder, the Iranian striker Ali Daei, before he scored again in stoppage time to win the game for Portugal 2-1. The 36-year-old made headlines only days ago when he rejoined his old English Premier League club, I should say, Manchester United. Well, you've been watching Newsday today. A reminder of our main news story before we go. Afghanistan is facing a major economic crisis as the value of its currency falls, sending the price of everyday necessities soaring. Many public services are close to collapse. That's it for Newsday at this hour. Thank you so much for joining me. Do stay with BBC News. I'm Karishma Viswani.
Hello there. On Wednesday was a lovely day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Widespread sunshine and pretty warm with 25 Celsius recording in Stirlingshire. Further south for England, though, in Wales, it was rather cloudy. In the next few days, it's a similar setup, probably the best of the sunshine across the north, more cloud in the south. And it's this area of high pressure, which we've had for nearly 2 weeks now, pretty much in the same position, bringing that east or northeast airflow. So a lot of cloud generally to start the day Thursday. Eventually, you start to see the cloud breaking up across Scotland and Northern Ireland and into northern England. So increasing sunshine here. It'll turn quite warm into the afternoon. But again, for much of England and Wales, a lot of cloud around. Some sunny breaks here and there. More of a breeze again across the south and through the Channel. Lighter winds further north. Could see temperatures reach the low to mid-20s in the sunny spots across Scotland. Otherwise, for most, where you have the cloud, around 17 to 19 or 20 degrees. Our area of high pressure is still with us on Friday, moving a little bit towards the east, but still bringing an easterly wind, and there will be quite a lot of cloud still wrapped up in the system. So again, Friday's pretty similar. Most of the cloud, I think, across central southern eastern areas, the best of the sunshine towards the west, where it'll feel a little bit warmer. Now, as we head on into the weekend, we start to see our area of high pressure drift in towards the near continent, and with low pressure approaching from the west, that's going to allow a run of southerly winds to develop across the country, and we'll start to tap in to some warmth across France there. So I think a gradual process, but during the weekend, temperatures will be climbing up gradually, and we should start to see increasing amounts of sunshine as we draw up some drier air from the south. Saturday, though, pretty similar to how Thursday and Friday shaping up with quite a bit of cloud around. But I think later in the day, there are signs of increasing sunshine across southern England, South Wales. That'll push temperatures perhaps up to 23 degrees or so. But for most, again, it's the mid to high teens or up to around 20. I think on Sunday, there's a greater chance of seeing more widespread sunshine, certainly a brighter day for much of England and Wales than what we've had over the past week. There's winds coming in from the south, from France there, pushing up into around the mid-20s across the south, the high teens further north. And then it's warmer still into the start of next week. We could be looking at values closer to the mid to upper 20s Celsius, particularly across central and southern areas.
The BBC World Service is a powerhouse. It's the world's radio station. How cool is that?
There were many occasions like the landing on the moon, which I learned about through the BBC World Service.
The BBC has provided joy, hope, and grace all over the world, which is really rare, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's no exaggeration to say the BBC World Service has become the international watchword for quality broadcasting.
Bringing the world closer. The BBC World Service.
This summer, step into a magical world. Whether it's your first time or you're returning for more, the greatest adventure in classical music is back, live. The Proms continues on Sundays, Thursdays and Fridays on BBC4 and iPlayer.
Football
was going nowhere in the 80s.
From the back pages.
After the game, it was all punch-up, you know?
To making headlines.
Football became glamorous.
Jack Walker meant business. All the drama on the pitch.
When you receive the ball, it's like a dance.
Yeah, you had somebody who went completely off script.
And off it.
I don't think